All right. Let's wrap this thing up. You're so close. We're so close. I've only got two more sequences to show you, and that's all you're going to need. I've got a 9-move sequence. You may need to execute that 0 times, or 1 time, or 2 times. Then I've got a 16-move sequence that you may or may not need to execute, but if you do, you'll only need to execute it once. But before we do any of that, let's make sure we call back to our understanding of this puzzle. You may already be done. After you got to the end of video 4, where we align the triangles, this and this and this, all pointed in the right direction, you may be done. If you've got a nice pentagon up here and all these pieces snap together and you think you're not done because you've got some pieces that don't line up down here, remember how I said way back at the beginning how the solved state exists in kind of this half position in between. So if you rotate around and those 3 triangle pieces are solved, triangle piece matches up here in the half position, triangle piece in the half position, triangle piece in the half position. If the square pieces are flush in around it, then you're done. You just got to make a half turn. That's going to be the case about 1 time out of every 6. So if you're not so lucky, I wasn't so lucky either. So we got to put our focus on these last 3 square pieces. Okay. Let's look at these 3 square pieces, and I like to differentiate them by a kind of a Sesame Street approach. Which one of these things is not like the others? I've got these 3 square pieces, and one of them isn't like the others. This one has a couple of different features from these 2. These 2 both have as their dominant feature a hexagon, 6 sides. Hexagon, 6 sides. This thing has a pentagon, hardly recognizable as pentagon, a very short side here. A pentagon or a trapezoid, depending on how your eye catches it, but only 5 sides here. This piece is also much bigger than those other 2. I got this big figure here. I've got other big figures around it. I've got much smaller figures over on these other 2 pieces. So I'm looking for the piece that, again, in the Sesame Street vernacular, which one of these things is not like the others? This one isn't like the others. This is what I'm going to focus on getting where it needs to be. You have to get these 3 square pieces in the right position. Worry about position before you worry about rotation. If one of these 3 pieces seems to line up with its neighbors, but it's in the wrong position, don't believe it. Worry about position first. Here's how you get the right position. This piece that is not like the others needs to go on the long edge of this South Pole piece. I'm looking at the South Pole right here. So I've got it oriented like this. I've got it in this sort of mountain peak kind of configuration. Here's this long piece on the bottom, and then this kind of crooked mountain peak going up here. And if you're sitting there saying, hey, there's no mountains in Antarctica, wrong, smart guy. The tallest peak in Antarctica is Mount Vinson, which is higher than the highest peak in the Rockies. So they got mountains down there, so I'm going to orient this thing just like Mount Vinson. Along the base of this mountain, along the longest edge of this piece, is where I want this square piece to be. So I've got a 9-move sequence. It isn't terribly difficult. It moves each of these 3 square pieces in a merry-go-round kind of fashion. There is no pattern that flips 2 of them and leaves 1 of them in the same place. You'll never have to do that. They are always in the right position relative to one another, but they may not be in the right position relative to the solved state. To get them into the solved state, I've got to get this piece on the long edge of the South Pole. And so here's the sequence I have for that. It's a 9-move sequence. I'm going to go back up to position 1. Here it is. It doesn't matter how the pieces in the southern hemisphere are oriented in this point, because they're all just going to go around in a circle. So I'm just going to do that once because it's going to move them all clockwise. This is going to go here. You may need to do it twice. If you have that piece over here, you're going to have to go bam, bam. You're going to have to do this 9-move sequence twice. If this piece is already here, you can skip this step. In my case, I'm going to have to do it once to get it from here to here. All right, back to position 1. There's piece number 1, and here's the sequence. R, T, R, T prime, L, B, L prime, B prime, R. All right, here's our northern hemisphere solved. Back to our southern hemisphere. Look what we've done. There's our piece that isn't like the others, the big piece, piece with the big shapes, piece with the trapezoid, pentagon looking thing, adjacent to the long edge of the South Pole, adjacent to the base of the mountain. That's what we wanted. You, after doing that sequence, may be done. You may find that these other 2 pieces have lined up, and you may find that your southern hemisphere is solved. And again, in that case, all it takes is just a half turn to line it up. Mine looks pretty solved, but I got these 2 here that aren't rotated right. I got a mess I got to fix here. So, you may be done. You may find that you still have a mess to clear up. And here it is. Here's our last sequence. And it's a long one. This is the last thing we have to do. You don't have to do it more than once. If I see this, I've got the 16-move sequence. I only have to do it once to wrap it up. Come back to position 1. Important. The 2 square pieces that you need to flip are going to be on the diagonal corners across on the bottom from piece number 1. So here's piece number 1. Below and to the right is 1 piece you need to flip. Below and to the left is to the other piece that you need to flip. So here it comes. It's 16 moves, and it's the last thing you're going to have to do before this thing is solved. L prime, B prime, T prime, did I mess that up? That was T. I'm trying to hold this so that it shows toward the camera, but it gets a little bit wacky. So that was T. Yeah, I had that right. T prime. T prime is this way. B, L prime, B prime, L, T prime, L prime, B, L prime, B, R, B, R prime, and finally T prime. There's our northern hemisphere, still solved, and there is our southern hemisphere, now solved. Alright, you're looking at this and say, well, I got these black parts, doesn't seem solved. Well, that's the last piece. Got to give it a half turn and find out where it matches up. And there it is. Northern and southern hemispheres are now fixed together. I see nice pentagons all the way around. Pentagon at the South Pole. Pentagon at the North Pole. And this puzzle is finished. And that's how you do it. That's how you solve the Ghost Xtreme. I'd love to say it took me years to do this. It took me a couple days with the assistance of some computer help to figure this out. I doubt that this is the most efficient solution. I've got the computers cranking, trying to figure a better way to get me there, but I feel like this is pretty close, to an ideal solution. At least, for I guess retail consumption, if you will, for the kind of thing that the average person could kind of stock in their memory banks and do for party tricks. I'm pretty happy with the solution. There may be around the edges, there may be some ways that I could make it a little bit more efficient, but it gets you there. I'm down to the point where I'm solving this thing in under a couple of minutes. So I feel like it's a pretty good solution for what's been an interesting puzzle. So once again, I do hope you enjoyed it. Do feel free to leave any comments if you like, and always encourage you to like and subscribe. There is the solution to the Ghost